What is up, everybody? It is JT Sports. I'm back to you guys with another NFL training camp preview. This time I have my guy Juice Alert on to preview and break down the Green Bay Packers training camp, what to expect, players to watch. Before we get into it, my guy Juice, tell the people where to find you at.
All right, so appreciate you for one, JT, for having me on the show. You've had me on the show in the past. It was a great time last year coming on. Glad to be on once again. I've kind of gotten to know JT a little bit off camera from afar. He's a great guy. If you have not subscribed to him already, you better subscribe to him. But for those of you that don't really know me, my name is Jamon McKinney. Actually, a lot of people just call me Juice or Juiceler because they feel my name's a little hard to pronounce. It's spelled weird, but my name is Jamon, or you can call me Juice if you want. Of course, I'm the host of the Juice Alert. You can find the Juice Alert on YouTube and podcasting platforms. Pretty much all my content is NFL based. And as you know, today we're going to be talking about the Green Bay Packers. Usually I don't like to tell people who my favorite team is in videos just because, you got some people out there saying, oh, this guy's biased. But I think I'm very unbiased, but we're going to talk about Green Bay today. I am a Green Bay Packers fan, however, though, so we'll talk about them, like I said. But, yeah, pretty much on the Juice Alert, I have my theories about sports, my different theories about quarterbacks, front offices, coaching. I have my theories. I have my evaluations. I stick to them. And if your team doesn't meet them, sometimes, I might come with a couple of hot takes, but it's all unbiased content here. Hey man, you know how it is, but it's all good. It's all unbiased content here, raw and uncut filter stuff. I do talk about some NBA topics every now and then. I will cover baseball every now and then, but mainly my channel is going to be talking about football, NFL mainly, but I will touch on some college football as well. This is the time of the year where I pretty much dive into my team previews. I will preview all 32 NFL teams, talk about them and things like that. So if you're a Packers fan or if you're a fan of other NFL teams, be sure to subscribe to the Juice Alert. You will not regret it.
Yeah, man. One thing I like about this guy, man, like this guy's he's like the polar opposite of me. I'm more chill, laid back. I try to look at things from, a rational standpoint. Meanwhile, you have this guy here, man. Let's just say this man has some really strong. If you're a fan of Colin Cowherd, you're going to be a fan of his channel. Make sure to check him out. So you're going to get the Green Bay Packers heading into training camp. I don't really want to spend too much time touching on Aaron Rodgers because I kind of feel like that takes away too much time. But it looks like Aaron Rodgers and Green Bay are expected to come to some kind of an agreement. He renewed his membership at the Green Bay Country Club golf course for what that's worth. So maybe that's a good indicator. But it looks like there's a pretty good chance that we see Aaron Rodgers remaining Packer this season and that he probably could show up to camp. So what's your thoughts real quick on the Aaron Rodgers training camp fiasco? Do you think there's a chance we see him show up in training camp or will he choose to sit out?
Yeah, I expect Aaron Rodgers to play this season in Green Bay. I've actually said that from the jump. Once Jordan Love got drafted, I said that Aaron Rodgers has a clock of about 2 years, and he's past year one. He won the MVP last year, proved a lot of people wrong, made a deep playoff run. Unfortunately, didn't win a Super Bowl, but had a great season, an all-time great season by even his lofty standards. So, look, it's one of those things where Aaron Rodgers is not going to retire. I think he's way too competitive of a football player to hang it up right now, and even if there is some disagreement between him and the Green Bay Packers front office, he's probably never going to catch Tom Brady or Joe Montana regarding the rings and things like that. But his statistics are off the charts. And if he can put together another season of, just putting together really good stats, maybe winning 10, 11 games, maybe seeing what happens in the playoffs, I think he's going to do it, And if he does opt the season, even for a guy like Aaron Rodgers that's made a lot of money, you're giving up a whole lot of money, okay? So I think Aaron Rodgers is too competitive to sit out for the year. And also, Green Bay has made it known they're not trying to trade Aaron Rodgers. The Los Angeles Rams have made phone calls to Green Bay. They immediately turned them down. The Miami Dolphins were rumored to maybe go after Aaron Rodgers. Those trade things have been turned down. Same with the Denver Broncos, So it's one of those things where Green Bay, they would like to potentially move on from Aaron Rodgers just because they drafted Jordan Love in the first round. They're high on the guy, but Jordan Love was drafted as a developmental guy. He was not an NFL-ready quarterback like Joe Burrow or Tua Tagovailoa. So he was going to need to sit for a year or two on the bench to properly develop. And Green Bay, similar to how they developed Aaron Rodgers behind Brett Favre, they have no problem taking their time with a quarterback. You know, they'll give a quarterback 2 to 3 years to sit and develop. And then when they know they're fully ready, they're going to pull the trigger and start that guy. So, look, I don't think Jordan Love gives us the best chance to win this year. It's obviously Aaron Rodgers. I believe he's going to stay in Green Bay, whether he is happy or not, just because, well, he's going to give him a lot of money if he doesn't come back. And, well, this is a pretty good team. You know, he'll have a decent shot of potentially competing for a Super Bowl this year. So I think Aaron Rodgers is definitely going to stay in Green Bay, at least for another year. But I think next offseason is where we seriously could see potentially Aaron Rodgers getting traded, especially if Jordan Love shows that he's potentially the guy. It all comes down to his development, but that's how I feel about the Aaron Rodgers fiasco. And by the way, just really quickly, I'm on Aaron Rodgers' side. I think that
of course you are. Of course you are. Of course. Wow. Isn't he like your favorite player in the league, isn't he?
Well, yes, he is.
See, you guys know what's funny about Juice, man? I'm biased, right? But I find it funny how he goes to bat for Justin Fields and Dwayne Haskins. But that's a topic for another discussion. So I just had to throw that out there. Remember, I'm biased. Buckeyes fan, ride or die for Justin Fields and Haskins.
Listen, man. I'll have Fields, Dwayne Haskins fiasco, all that stuff. But yeah, I think I'm on Aaron Rodgers' side. You know, I think that Green Bay has really mishandled this, and they really haven't done anything to really sit down and show Aaron Rodgers that they're willing to fix it. And I think Aaron Rodgers deep down kind of really wants to stick it to Green Bay a little bit and say, okay, maybe if I go to Miami and Denver, I can prove y'all wrong and maybe win a Super Bowl.
But here's where I disagree with Aaron Rodgers. Like, I understand he wants what Tom Brady has and whatnot. But at the same time, though, like the Packers don't have this terrible roster. Like, you look at the wide receiver, which is the most interesting thing I'm intrigued in, because wide receiver isn't bad by no stretch. You have Davante Adams, we know about him, but you have Marquez Valdes-Scantling, he's pretty solid. You have Equanimeous St. Brown. I mean, can the guy stay healthy? You got Allen Lazard. Like, there's definitely some talent there. So which guy do you think going into training camp ends up becoming that wide receiver number 2? And who are some sleeper wide receivers on this roster who you think could have a really good training camp?
Well, I think one person that Packers fans and really NFL fans are not talking about enough is a guy in Devin Funchess, who was signed last out of the season. Now, I was pretty happy about the Devin Funchess signing last year. I thought he was going to come in and do some good things. Obviously opted out, but he's a big body wide receiver with underrated speed. I think he could become a really good red zone target for Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. We were a pretty good red zone offense last year, but you saw in the critical moments in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers game in the playoffs, at times we were moving the ball down the field, but we weren't as efficient in the red zone as we wanted to be. I think that a guy like Devin Funchess can really complement a guy like Davante Adams, who's pretty much a do-it-all wide receiver. We know Davante Adams is elite. He's at worst the top 5 wide receiver in the league. People argue he's the best wide receiver. He's definitely in that conversation. So when it comes to Davante Adams, you know you're going to get your 80 to 90, maybe 100 catches, probably 10-plus touchdowns. I think Devin Funchess is definitely going to come in and provide a spark for this team potentially. But I'm also looking at Amari Rodgers, a guy at Clemson. And I've been of the advocate that Green Bay's need to address the defense a little bit more over the past couple of years. A lot of Packers fans, when we passed on when we drafted Jordan Love, a lot of Packers fans were upset we didn't draft a wide receiver. And I was kind of in that boat because I felt that, look, Jordan Love's not helping us win a Super Bowl right now. We need to be in win now mode. We don't need Jordan Love. Aaron Rodgers is great, but I really wanted Patrick Queen in that draft class. I felt that he was going to be a difference maker potentially on our defense, but I really don't understand why people continue to cry about the wide receiver core. Yes, they'll drop occasional passes. Marquez Valdes-Scantling, Lazard, especially St. Brown will drop occasional passes. But these guys made plays last year. And I think that a guy like Marquez Valdes-Scantling really grew last year. He had some inconsistencies early in the year, but as you saw the year progress, you really started to see Aaron Rodgers trust him and really go to him in big spots. He was very good in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers playoff game for us. So I think Marquez Valdes-Scantling has pretty much, solidified his spot on the roster. I think a guy like St. Brown, Equanimeous St. Brown, is kind of on the fringe of making the roster just because we drafted a guy, Amari Rodgers, who Packers fans are very excited about. I think he can really fill the slot wide receiver role, which is what we've desperately needed. Amari Rodgers fits perfectly with what we want to do. I've always said we need a guy with legitimate speed that can just get open without being schemed open. And I like MVS, I like Lazard, I like guys outside Devontae Adams, but they're very scheme dependent. Rodgers talent with our scheme, that could be something special. I do think Robert Tonyan has to prove can, follow up his pretty much a breakout season last year. Josiah DeGuara is a potential tight end that could be Lewis. But overall, I think that Aaron Rodgers has enough weapons to throw to. I think Amari Rodgers was the missing piece, and he really completes this wide receiver core. So if anything, the wide receiver position is one of the few positions I don't have a whole lot of questions about, in all honesty.
Yeah, man. So you look at tight end, we already know how good Robert Tonyan was. What about Jay Sternberger? Jay Sternberger is a guy who was really good coming out of Texas A&M. I was really high on him. Haven't really seen that much out of him. What's the status on him going into training camp? Is there going to be a little bit more pressure on him to perform this year, or do you think he'll probably end up making the roster?
So he's kind of on the fringe of actually making the roster, which is actually pretty surprising in my opinion, considering the fact that we drafted him. I know it was like a third or fourth round pick. I believe it was a fourth round pick. Don't quote me on that. This is off the top of my head. But I felt that he had a really good senior season, or final season, I should say, at Texas A&M. But the thing is, he just can't really stay healthy. That's been his biggest problem. And because he hasn't been able to stay healthy over the past couple of years, it's allowed guys like Robert Tonyan to jump him on the depth chart. You still got Marcedes Lewis, who's a pretty good blocker. He's going to be on the roster just from that standpoint of him being a really good blocker. We don't really have a great blocking tight end on this roster outside of Marcedes Lewis. Robert Tonyan will occasionally block, I should say. Pardon me. That's not really a strength. And Jay Sternberger is not really much of a blocker either. We saw him in the playoffs several years ago when we got blown out by the 49ers in the NFC Championship game. He caught a really nice touchdown pass. So the talent definitely is there, but he's got some work to do as far as working his way up the depth chart, just because, well, he's kind of an unknown commodity because he can't stay healthy, and the best ability is availability.
Yeah. So last thing we got to touch about on the offense is, okay, the offensive line. So the offensive line is pretty good. You look at Elgton Jenkins, one of the best guards in the league, but you lost Corey Linsley. How are you feeling about this Packers offensive line heading into training camp? Are there some potential position battles that we could see? Are there some areas to be worried about? Maybe lack of talent at a certain position on the offensive line? Because outside looking in from an outsider's perspective, I think the Packers have a really good offensive line. So, are you concerned about the offensive line at any certain positions? What are those?
So there is some things that I'm a tad bit concerned about. We did lose Corey Linsley in free agency, who's in the conversation for being one of the best centers in the entire NFL. I think the Chargers really got a good pickup with him. So there's definitely a spot to be filled right there. There is some talk that Elgton Jenkins is going to move to center because he's just an absolute beast. I loved that pick when we made it a couple of years ago when he was coming out of Texas A&M in the second round. The guy's a stud, and he can pretty much play any position on the offensive line. So they're going to try him out at center. However, we did draft Josh Myers out of Ohio State, who I think is going to be, I think he projects to be a pretty good starting center that can only get better and better as he gets more reps in the NFL. So ideally, personally, for me, I think that we need to give Josh Myers an opportunity to win that starting center job, because then it makes things a lot more easier, because as of right now, John Runyon is a guy that potentially could be starting on the offensive line. He was a 6th round pick out of Michigan that we drafted a year ago. Right now, potentially the lineup for the offensive line could be David Bakhtiari, obviously, John Runyon at left guard, Elgton Jenkins at center, Louis Patrick, who I have some questions about, at right guard, and Billy Turner at right tackle. I think right tackle is pretty much solidified. I think left tackle is solidified. I think at least one of the guard positions is solidified, but it's just going to come down to, what do the coaching staffs feel gives them the best chance to succeed? Is it Elgton Jenkins at center, or is it Josh Myers at center? Whereas then you can just pretty much leave Elgton Jenkins at guard, where he's thrived the past 2 years. So I don't have a whole lot of concerns about the offensive line isn't any good, then that's a big concern because the depth on this offensive line isn't the greatest. And listen, if Green Bay wants to get over the hump, they're going to have to beat teams like the Rams, the 49ers, the Buccaneers, who have really good defensive lines. So I'm a tad bit concerned, but not overly concerned.
Everybody, make sure that you guys check out my guy, Juice Alert. Type in Juice Alert on YouTube. I also will have the link to his YouTube channel down in the pinned comment section down below. Now, you look at this defense, okay, you bring in a new defensive coordinator, you got rid of Mike Pettin. I think the defensive line is pretty good. You got Rashawn Gary there, who had a pretty solid season last year. You have the Smith brothers. Linebacker is something that I'm really concerned about, okay, because you try to experiment with Christian Kirksey. That didn't work out. He's now with the Texans. How is linebacker looking? Because once again, Green Bay can't find a good linebacker really that can cover in the passing game. You find linebackers who are good against the run, like Blake Martinez was, but they're not really all that great in pass coverage. So how's linebacker looking for Green Bay?
Honestly, it's a hit and miss group for me. I have some questions about that group. My two biggest concerns about this football team overall is if we just disclude the Aaron Rodgers stuff, it's honestly just overall the middle of the defense, the defensive tackle position and the linebacker position. I'll talk about the linebacker position because you asked about it. We did draft Isaiah, what's his name? McDuffie. Yeah, Isaiah McDuffie out of Boston College, who was a 6th-round pick. I don't really know a whole lot about him. I'm not too high on him. He's kind of undersized. There's a reason why he was a late-round pick, not like a top, 50 or 40 pick or things like that. So at least we addressed the linebacker position a little bit in the draft by trying to go out there and get some depth. Kamal Martin really stepped up last year, but he's not very good in coverage. And also Chris Barnes, he stepped up last year, an undrafted free agent who was pretty good last year for us, but he's not very good in coverage. And also these guys are inconsistent. I'm just keeping it real. These guys are inconsistent. They'll be really good.
I mean, at this point, get a safety and move. This is what Green Bay should do. They should find a safety and move the linebacker. Because even though you may not have the size there, at least you have a guy who can cover the middle of the field.
Yeah, but the thing is, I just don't really know who's going to fill that role. I think we kind of know who the stars are going to be. I think Kamal Martin's going to start. I think Chris Barnes is going to start just based on what they showed last year. Even though there is some inconsistency to their game, it's the best we have, And we did actually bring in Devontae Campbell in free agency from the Cardinals. Now, there's a reason why he was on the free agent block. I think his best years are kind of behind him. I don't think he's a great scheme fit for what Joe Barry and the Packers want to do on defense this year. They're going to change some things up. But the one thing we know about Joe Barry is he has a history of developing linebackers. So I think that's a big reason why we brought him in. A lot of people credit him for developing Corey Littleton. Now, obviously, Corey Littleton didn't have a great season for the Raiders last year. That's a story for another day. But when he was under Joe Barry, he was a pretty good linebacker, under his tutelage. So, guys like Ty Summers and Oren Burks are guys that we are confident in just because they've been in the scheme a little bit. But they have something to prove because I was pretty high on Oren Burks. He was actually a safety at Vanderbilt, and we converted him for his final year at Vanderbilt, but he hasn't grown a whole lot, so linebacker is one of those positions where we know what these guys are capable of, but I definitely wish we would have tried to upgrade there,
Yeah, so you look at corner, safety, don't really need to talk that much about it. We already know you have one of the best safety tandems in the league with Adrian Amos and Darnell Savage there, who had a really good year last season. So what's the depth behind those guys? If one of those guys were to, knock on wood, unfortunately have an injury, who would be stepping in?
It's interesting. I think our safety group, like you said, is pretty much set. You got Adrian Amos, you got Darnell Savage. Those are two really good safeties. I will say Will Redmond definitely showed some promise last year when called upon. I think that I'm confident if a guy like Amos or Darnell Savage gets hurt, I think Will Redmond definitely can come in and give us some reliable snaps. Also, Scott Vernon out of TCU, who we drafted a year ago in the 7th round, I believe. I think that he's a solid player, but a lot of unknowns there. I actually am pretty confident in this cornerback and safety group. Like I said, I talked about the safety group. Let's talk about the cornerbacks. You know, Jaire Alexander, we know he's pretty much arguably
one of the best in the game.
Cornerback in the NFL. Yeah, I think he's the best corner in the NFL, not named Jalen Ramsey. I think that he's right behind Ramsey. I think Ramsey is bigger. He has more size than Jaire, but Jaire's a stud. You know, he's going to do his thing, you know. I was so happy the Packers drafted Eric Stokes out of Georgia. When I did my, mock draft, when I pretty much put it together every year, I actually had the Packers taking Eric Stokes at number 29 overall in the first round. And I even had him graded over a guy like Asante Samuel, who Packers fans really thought we were probably going to draft. And I like Asante Samuel Jr. a lot. I think the Chargers got a good player. I think that Eric Stokes' ball skills, his athleticism, and his ability to play both man and zone coverage is really going to help us.
Was really good against Devontae Smith. Gave Devontae Smith fits coming off the line, even though Devontae Smith still got his because, great receiver, he's still going to get his. But him and both Tyson Campbell were really good against Devontae Smith when it came to, how good of a press man-to-man corner he is. So, yeah, I definitely like Tyson Campbell a lot and Eric Stokes. And he's also really quick and has very nice hips. Like, I like Eric Stokes.
Yeah, he was one of the best overall athletes in the draft, and a lot of people said, oh, Tyson Campbell's better than Eric Stokes, I'm not so sure about that. I know that Tyson Campbell most of the time probably was the number one guy at Georgia, but I think Eric Stokes was right behind him,
When they won't be.
Yeah. And so I think that Jaire Alexander and Eric Stokes make up a very good cornerback duo. Now, Kevin King's going to have to prove himself this year because coming out of Washington, I was pretty high on him. I think that he had a pretty good year in 2019, which was not this past year, but last year.
I was about to say, last year, that NFC Championship game was rough.
He came down to earth last year, and I think that the Packers really brought him back to be kind of a Band-Aid and really just to see what he could do this year. It was a cheap deal. It's a one-year prove-it deal. Let's see what you got, Kevin King, If we see flashes of it from time to time, then he's going to get probably re-signed. But if he doesn't, then, well, we're going to let him walk. We're pretty confident in Eric Stokes. But we do have Josh Jackson behind those guys. I was pretty high on him coming out of Iowa. He really hasn't shown a whole lot in the NFL. I think that part of it also is the Packers coaching staff not really trusting him just because he's more of a zone coverage corner. And we do like to play a lot of man-to-man coverage. But whenever Josh Jackson has been in games, he hasn't really done all that bad. So overall, I think the cornerback group is pretty good. I think that Jaire, Kevin King, and Eric Stokes are three really good quality cornerbacks. I'm so happy we drafted Eric Stokes. You know what I'm saying?
How do you feel about the interior of the defensive line? I touched on it a little bit earlier. We know how good Rashawn Gary was going into year two. There was a lot of criticism about Rashawn Gary. This was a guy who didn't really have a lot of production coming out of college. He basically was a guy who was drafted because of his athletic ability. And his rookie season wasn't all that great. And, of course, when you draft a guy like that, there's going to be some disappointment. There's going to be some concerns. But last year, I feel like he did pretty solid. How do you feel about him and the rest of this pass rushing core? Because we know about Zadarius Smith. I think he probably is one of, if not the most underrated pass rusher in the NFL. Had double-digit sacks last year, and nobody really talked about it all that much.
Yeah, overall, I don't have very many questions about Zadarius Smith. Really quickly, I will say Preston Smith is kind of on the clock because of a guy like Rashawn Gary. When we drafted Rashawn Gary, I wasn't all that high on him. I really wanted a guy like Devin Bush, which we obviously couldn't get because your Pittsburgh Steelers went and stole him.
As a matter of fact, thank Antonio Brown when everybody said the Steelers got robbed and the Antonio Brown trade. They traded him for a bag of chips and a Coca-Cola. The Steelers, being the great franchise they are, turned the bag of chips and a peanut butter jelly sandwich that was rotten into a very good player.
Yeah, but I really wanted Devin Bush in the first round. We obviously couldn't get him. I really wanted Dexter Lawrence. I felt that if we paired Dexter Lawrence next to Kenny Clark, that'd be a monstrous defensive tackle duo. And Dexter Lawrence has been really good for the New York Giants. Also, I was pretty high on Montez Sweat and Clelin Ferrell. I had them all as players that I wanted over Rashawn Gary. Rashawn Gary is one of the guys I really didn't want us to draft, but he's here now. So let's talk about it. I think Gary needs to be moved around a lot more on this defensive line because he's not naturally a guy that bends off the edge extremely well. He uses his size and power and quickness, but there's some technical aspects of his game as a pass rusher he needs to continue to work at. Personally, I want to see him inside more next to Kenny Clark because at Michigan, we saw his versatility where you moved him outside, inside, things like that. He's a tremendous athlete. We need to take advantage of that. But I do want to say that he definitely progressed in year number 2. He still wasn't getting enough snaps, in my opinion, for whatever reason. We felt Preston Smith was doing better than him at the end of the year. But, Rashawn Gary, I think that he's one of the guys to look at in training camp because if he takes a huge leap this year, then I think that he has a chance to really break out. I think that his athleticism and the intangibles are there. It's just all about him putting it together and if the coaching staff really trusts him. But overall, I'm not too happy about the depth behind Gary, Zadarius, and Kenny Clark, who's a defensive tackle, who's one of the best defensive tackles in the league. I'm happy that we drafted Tedarrell Slaton out of Florida. Some people call him TJ Slaton. I don't know why there's a difference in names, but that's just how it is, But I'm going to call him Tedarrell. So Tedarrell Slaton out of Florida, he's a big defensive tackle.
Run stuffer.
At Florida, he was playing around at times 360 to 350 pounds. Now, he has slimmed down a little bit. He's around 330 pounds right now. That's the last time we saw him when he checked in. So I like the fact that he lost a little bit of weight to get a little bit more agile, but you didn't really see a whole lot of production at Florida, even though he has the intangibles, the size, and things like that. And just off natural physical ability, he's going to be a guy that you maybe pay attention to. But, he just wasn't the force to be reckoned with that we thought he was going to be at Florida. That's a big reason why he dropped in the draft. So if he can reach his full potential, we have something next to Kenny Clark. But outside of that, I'm not too confident. Dean Lowry is just a guy. Tyler Lancaster, just a guy. People thought that Kingsley Keke was going to be really good coming out of Texas A&M. I wasn't all that high on him. He hasn't shown me a whole lot. So, again, I go back to the middle of the defense. The middle of this defense is kind of soft, Outside of the Kenny Clarks and Zadarius Smiths of the world, I'm not too confident in this defensive line, and I think the linebacker core is a question as well, like I said earlier.
Yeah, man, definitely one of the more questionable front sevens in the league. So the most important guy I want to be watching in training camp for Green Bay has to be Jordan Love. Now, Jordan Love started off a little bit rough, but he really picked up a lot of momentum near the end of OTAs, had a really good mini camp, which was trending on Twitter about how good he performed. So, how do you feel about Jordan Love heading into training camp? Like, do you think that this is just all, media hype? The Packers maybe the Packers media team, their PR team said, let's try to make people believe in Jordan Love per se. So, how you feeling about that? Like, can you confirm, are there any truth to those Jordan Love balling out rumors, or is that just speculation?
So there is some truth to Jordan Love picking things up at the end of those, OTAs and, towards the end of those workouts and things like that. He had a rough start where he was overthrowing wide receivers, throwing some bad interceptions, but he really picked it up, as time went on, But the biggest thing is, here's my biggest concern, let me just say this. If we roll into the season with Jordan Love, we're probably not going to be a playoff team. This offense changes a whole lot with Jordan Love under center, just because when you look at Aaron Rodgers, he does a lot at the line of scrimmage, and he's able to ad lib, take care of the football. You're going from a guy that you don't know a whole lot about. Well, you're going from an MVP level player in Aaron Rodgers to a guy you don't know a whole lot about. So if Jordan Love were to play this year, we're going to be relying a lot on guys like Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon, Dexter Williams. We drafted a running back out of Mississippi State this year whose name is
Kalen Hill. Kalen Hill.
Yeah. But, it's going to be more of a run-first team if Jordan Love is the starting quarterback this year, because there's a whole lot of complex things to this offense that he probably hasn't, gotten, fully comfortable with. We saw Aaron Rodgers, even in the first year of the Matt LaFleur system. He had a good season, but not the Aaron Rodgers, that bad man, even in a down year, he's going to put up a lot of great numbers. But it's just one of those things where I think that when it comes to Jordan Love, there's a lot of unknowns, But I will say, if he's good, then this kind of solves this Aaron Rodgers situation a little bit right here, because one thing we know about Jordan Love is right now he's on a rookie contract. And ideally, I personally don't want to do this, but I think the Packers are going to look to see, okay, next year.
Hell yeah.
They're going to look to see next year.
He can go host Jeopardy full time.
Nah.
Listen. I don't care how good Jordan Love is. I'm not trading Aaron Rodgers to nowhere that he can come and bite me in the rear end. Listen, if I'm Green Bay, Aaron Rodgers is starting QB until he retires, because there's no way I'm going to let this guy go to any other team in the NFL and come back and, bite me in the rear end. So if I'm Green Bay, listen, I love Aaron Rodgers and Jordan Love. He can ball out in preseason. He can do what he can. But at the end of the day, next season comes around, I think that Green Bay personally should try to keep Aaron Rodgers, because I think like the longer Jordan Love sits, the better he can get. I think if you get rid of Aaron Rodgers, then you risk the chance of him coming on a better team and smacking you in the butt. So really, personally, if I was Green Bay, I'd probably give Aaron Rodgers the ultimatum if it came down to it. Retire and host Jeopardy, or, retire and host Jeopardy if you really want to leave that bad, because I really don't think the Packers really want to trade him. Even if Jordan Love balls out in the preseason, which I think he definitely will, I still think Aaron Rodgers remains a Packer. And I understand that Jordan Love has a cheaper deal and whatnot, but I just feel like the Packers really are drawn to Aaron Rodgers. I don't think they're willing to let him go just quite yet. So I appreciate you coming on.
Let me just say this really quickly before I go. If Jordan Love, let me just say this right now. No excuses for Jordan Love. And again, this may not be all on him, but he has to be really, really good, okay? Because you got a chance to sit behind an all-time great quarterback in Aaron Rodgers. The Packers traded up to get this guy when Aaron Rodgers was still playing good football. And you've got a pretty good roster around you. Compared to what Joe Burrow has, even though they drafted Jamar Chase and whatnot, compared to some of these other quarterbacks, Jordan Love has some things to work with. So he can't just be an average quarterback, okay? If he's just a decent quarterback or an average quarterback, you might need to look to trade him potentially. Maybe the Atlanta Falcons want to talk about, getting Jordan Love.
Yeah, I'll take him. I'm taking them Pittsburgh.
Nah, y'all got Dwayne Haskins, But that's a story for another day. Listen, I think Haskins has more potential than Jordan Love, definitely. But it's just one of those things where Jordan Love has to be really good, because you don't trade up for a guy when you have a Hall of Fame level quarterback in Aaron Rodgers still playing good football, and he gets to sit behind that guy and things like that. So listen, Green Bay, y'all better get this right. If Jordan Love is average, go ahead.
We also got to talk about running back. Like I can't believe we forgot all about running back, man. So, okay, we know Aaron Jones got a big extension. AJ Dillon's going viral for the monster quads. I don't know if all he does is do squats all day, but the dude is massive. You got Dexter Williams there. Kalen Hill, man. I really feel like Kalen Hill could make this roster. I don't know how you feel about him, but coming out of Mississippi State, man, he could have went round 2, round 3 if he would have came in 2019. But, Mike Leach took over, and Mike Leach basically said, listen, I can get you drafted into the first round. I can make NFL scouts realize that you are an all-purpose back. You can do it all. Last year didn't really work out, had some disciplinary issues and whatnot. But I definitely feel like he probably is the best pass-catching back currently on the Packers roster, which I think is kind of something lacking. And, a guy like an AJ Dillon per se. So, like, how do you feel about Kalen Hill? How do you feel about the overall running back room in general? Like, do you like the depth there? Or are you concerned about the depth? How you feeling?
Well, regarding Kalen Hill, I think that he is going to have an uphill battle to make the roster. Just Definitely. Because you have a guy like AJ Dillon, who you invested a second-round pick in. You just re-signed Aaron Jones. Dexter Williams, I think, is an underrated player with some talent on this roster. But overall, I feel pretty confident in the running back room. I actually wasn't a big, bring Aaron Jones back fan, just because I feel that when it comes to the run game in the NFL, a lot of that is predicated on the offensive line. And while I think Aaron Jones is really good, I don't put him in the category with Derrick Henry, with Saquon Barkley, with guys like that, just because, if he gets like 20 touches one game, he kind of is worn out the next game, But I think he's a pretty good running back, no doubt about it. He'll be the starter. I think A.J. Dillon complements his skill sets perfectly, so I really like that 1-2 punch, and we'll see who's the third guy,
Yeah, man. So everybody, this is my guy, Juice Alert. Juice Alert, one more time, let the people know where they can find you at and what you have coming up on the channel over the next couple of days and weeks.
So once again, guys, my name is Jamon McKinney, or you could just call me Juice or the Juice Alert, as most people refer to me as, And you can subscribe to the Juice Alert on YouTube or on podcasting platforms. And pretty much what you're going to see over the next couple of days, months, weeks, is a lot of NFL stuff. I'll probably still be covering some NBA topics, just because, the Bucks and the Atlanta Hawks are wrapping up their series. Obviously, the Phoenix Suns are a big storyline. So I do love to talk my NBA, but usually, this channel is going to be mainly about football, and I'm going to be, starting out talking about each team, each division, and things like that. I'll give record predictions for all 32 teams, like I said, and, down the road, potentially once the NFL season starts, I might bring my film breakdowns back, where I break down quarterbacks. In the past, I've broken down Dwayne Haskins' film, Kyler Murray's film, Jameis Winston's film, so we'll see what happens. I think that takes a lot of time as far as making that content. So I just want to be sure that I can consistently put that content out before I start doing it. But yeah, a whole lot of great stuff over here on the Juice Alert. So come join the family. You know what I'm saying? And you can also follow me on Twitter at GHIMANMCKINNEY, and also on Instagram, GHIMAN_MCKINNEY.
And I appreciate you for coming on, man. Take care.